Few figures in Western Australia's criminal underworld have shaped the bikie landscape as dramatically and controversially as Troy McCanty. For over 2 decades, his name has been linked to interclub conflicts, betrayals, and a series of violent events that altered the balance of power among the state's most notorious motorcycle gangs. To law enforcement, he was a recognizable outlaw. To fellow gang members, he was a strategic operator whose decisions sparked one of WA's most intense bikie wars. Troy's influence was undeniable, polarizing, and often deadly. Before we dive into one of Western Australia's most infamous bikie figures, make sure to subscribe to Crime Cipher and ring the bell icon. Today, we uncover the life of Troy McCanty, a man whose name has been synonymous with gang wars, violent feuds, and the rise of outlaw motorcycle culture in WA. From family heir to notorious biker, his story is as complex as it is shocking. Every decision, betrayal, and confrontation left ripples that shaped WA's criminal underworld in ways still felt today. Born in 1967 into a successful Italian-Australian family, Troy's early life contrasted sharply with the path he would later choose. His father, Michael McCanty, had emigrated from Italy in 1952 and built a thriving shoe business in Perth, eventually expanding into a multi-million-dollar enterprise with multiple kiosks. Troy and his 3 brothers had a clear path into a stable family business. Yet, by his early 20s, Troy rejected that life, drawn instead to the outlaw motorcycle scene. His rise within the Coffin Cheetahs, one of WA's oldest biker gangs, began quietly but quickly. He displayed early traits of cunning, audacity, and strategic thinking that would define his later actions. By 2005, Troy's name became known nationally. 3 days before Australia Day, a meeting beneath Metro nightclub in Northbridge between Troy and Scorpion Boys member Nabil Debag erupted into violence. Nabil attacked first, stabbing Troy in the neck and chest. Troy survived and retaliated, shooting Nabil 5 times. Both survived, were hospitalized, and later faced charges, but a jury acquitted them. The incident cemented Troy's reputation as one of WA's most volatile bikers, capable of instant and calculated retaliation. It also signaled that Troy was not only a participant in violence, but a man willing to escalate conflict strategically, understanding the psychological impact of survival and revenge. 2 years later, in 2007, Troy's violent tendencies escalated further. At Northbridge Geisha Bar, a confrontation with Gregory F. Stonish quickly turned physical, leaving F. Stonish unconscious with a broken jaw. Troy was later sentenced to 28 months in prison. That same year, another incident in Osborne Park triggered interstate hostilities. Senior Comanchero Steve Shorty Milan Tishkovsky was attacked by Troy and an associate, leading to a firebombing of the Coffin Cheetahs Bayswater clubhouse and a wave of retaliatory violence across Perth. Each act illustrated his willingness to leverage violence not only for personal vendetta, but as a tool to manipulate power structures within rival clubs. The feud continued east, with a failed peace meeting in Sydney between senior Comanchero members and Troy's allies leading to gunfire and chaos. By early 2008, the conflict was so tangled that the Perth-based Sword Boys attempted mediation. During this period, it was revealed that Troy had secretly been dealing with rivals, an unforgivable betrayal in bikie culture. In February 2008, he was lured to a Moore River goat farm, ambushed by his former club, beaten, and stripped of his insignia. Expulsion on bad terms is one of the gravest humiliations in outlaw clubs, and Troy's actions would spark even further conflict, cementing his image as both cunning and untrustworthy to some, brilliant and fearless to others. Within months, Troy joined the rival Finn Club, helping to establish a new Perth chapter and bringing loyalists and organizational structure with him. Compounding tensions, his partner Tammy Kingdom stole $54,000 from trust funds for deceased Coffin Cheetahs' children to buy a property for the new clubhouse. Troy refused to answer questions from the Australian Crime Commission about the theft, earning an extra 12-month jail term. Even as the war simmered through 2009, his influence over the bikie underworld remained potent. He demonstrated a rare ability to combine leadership, fear, and loyalty into a powerful personal brand within the outlaw community. In October 2010, while Troy was imprisoned, violence erupted at the Kwinana Motolex motorcycle drag racing event. Minor provocations escalated into a brutal brawl involving fists, knives, and firearms. David Maripidi, a close ally of Troy, was shot in the leg, Stephen Wallace suffered severed fingers and multiple stab wounds, and others were seriously injured. Authorities noted that the incident was a direct consequence of Troy's expulsion and subsequent actions, proving that even behind bars, his influence persisted. The chaos highlighted how one man's decisions could ignite cascading conflict across multiple clubs and events. After his release in 2011, Troy's notoriety continued. By 2013, he faced trial for years of alleged abuse toward his former partner Tammy Kingdom, who testified to repeated assaults and intimidation. Evidence included testimony from Troy's mother corroborating the attacks. 2 weeks into the trial, Troy pleaded guilty to multiple counts of assault and causing grievous bodily harm. In March 2013, he was sentenced to 6 years and 10 months, with the court noting his lack of remorse and controlling behavior. The sentencing marked a turning point. It reflected both legal accountability and the challenges of curbing influence that had already deeply embedded him in the WA underworld. Troy was released in January 2019 under strict supervision, including bans on alcohol, contact with outlaw bikers, and club activities. During his incarceration, the Fine-Ins had merged with the Mongols, expanding the notorious American-founded gang into Australia. Upon release, Troy reportedly joined the Mongols' WA chapter, cementing his continued influence in the state's outlaw scene. Subsequent arrests and legal breaches in 2020 and 2023 under new anti-consorting laws reinforced his notoriety, making him the first person charged under WA's anti-association regime. These legal interventions illustrated how authorities increasingly viewed Troy as a central figure shaping criminal behavior rather than a peripheral enforcer. In 2024, Troy achieved a surprising victory outside crime, entering the professional boxing ring in Bangkok at 58. Denied a license in WA, he traveled overseas, trained rigorously, and knocked out Thai fighter Kitsana Bunison in just 23 seconds. The win made international headlines, highlighting a man whose life had spanned violent crime, legal battles, and now sport. The fight was more than a personal achievement. It was a demonstration of continued dominance, resilience, and the ability to command attention even outside the outlaw world. It reignited debates over redemption, public safety, and the thin line between notoriety and celebrity. Beyond the individual acts of violence, Troy McCanty's legacy sits at the center of how Western Australia's bikie wars evolved from localized turf disputes into long-running, multi-club conflicts. Law enforcement intelligence has repeatedly highlighted that many of the retaliatory attacks, alliances, and betrayals across the late 2000s can be traced back to decisions Troy made during his time with the Coffin Cheetahs and later the Fine-Ins. His willingness to switch allegiances, negotiate with enemies, and defy traditional club loyalty norms destabilized long-standing power structures. This created a climate where trust eroded, paranoia flourished, and violence became the default method of communication between rival factions. In many ways, Troy represented a shift from old-school biker loyalty to a more strategic, survival-driven outlaw mindset. Police analysts have often described Troy as a force multiplier rather than a lone aggressor. Even when he was incarcerated, his name carried enough weight to provoke reactions on the street. Younger bikers aligned themselves based on perceived loyalty to or opposition against him, turning his personal disputes into broader club-wide confrontations. This ripple effect explains why major outbreaks of violence continued even when Troy himself was not physically present. His influence exposed a critical vulnerability in outlaw motorcycle gangs, that leadership does not always sit at the top of the hierarchy, but instead with individuals capable of commanding fear, loyalty, and reputation simultaneously. The emergence of stricter anti-consorting and anti-association laws in Western Australia was, in part, shaped by figures like Troy McCanty. Authorities viewed him as a case study in how traditional policing struggled to disrupt outlaw networks built on reputation rather than formal structure. The laws introduced after his release were designed to sever communication channels, restrict movement, and dismantle informal power bases within gangs. Troy becoming the first person charged under these laws was symbolic. It marked a turning point where the state signaled that reputation alone would no longer shield individuals from accountability. Yet critics argue these laws also push bike activity further underground, making intelligence gathering even more difficult. What makes Troy's story uniquely unsettling is how it blends brutality with reinvention. His pivot into professional boxing at an age most athletes retire challenged public perception. To supporters, it was proof of discipline and resilience. To critics, it was a calculated attempt to rebrand without confronting the damage left behind. The fight in Bangkok was not just a sporting event, it was a statement. It showed that even under constant surveillance and legal pressure, Troy continued to seek dominance, validation, and public attention. In many ways, the ring replaced the clubhouse as his new arena. Today, Troy McCanty occupies a strange space in Australia's criminal mythology. He is neither fully removed from the underworld nor completely consumed by it. His ongoing legal battles, reported Mongols affiliations, and public appearances ensure he remains relevant in both police intelligence and media narratives. For younger bikers, he represents both a cautionary tale and a blueprint, proof that notoriety brings power, but also lifelong consequences. For authorities, he remains a reminder that outlaw culture does not disappear, it adapts. Troy's life illustrates a central truth about the bikie underworld: no war truly ends. Feuds pause, alliances shift, and names change, but the cycle persists. The violence surrounding Troy was never isolated to him alone. It affected families, bystanders, and entire communities caught between rival clubs. His story is not just about criminality. It is about identity, belonging, and the cost of choosing power over peace. And as long as outlaw motorcycle gangs continue to thrive in the shadows, figures like Troy McCanty will remain both symbols and warnings of what that world demands in return. Troy McCanty's story is far from over. From headline-grabbing criminality to an international sporting stage, his life continues to defy expectations and challenge authorities. He remains a figure of fascination, fear, and notoriety, a living embodiment of WA's biker wars and the personal consequences of choosing a life of power, risk, and rebellion. If you want more stories from the Australian underworld, make sure to subscribe to Crime Cipher. Hit the bell icon so you never miss the truth behind the bikie wars, gang conflicts, and the men who shaped them. Comment your thoughts below on Troy's life, and stay tuned as we continue to uncover the hidden realities of crime, loyalty, and survival in Australia's outlaw biker world.